I think for me, that's when it clicked that like, it's not just about knowing how to communicate because anyone can do that. It's, how you connect with people and also just being genuine with it and having real intention behind it to do that. Because it's easy to get caught up in that corporate swirl and be just like, checking the box of the things that you got to do for the day and not intentionally connecting with people. And that's when it really, that's when you really turn into a leader, when you can have that time to really connect authentically.
Welcome to the Next Level Women podcast, where powerhouse women break limits, claim their worth, and rise beyond good enough. I'm Jennifer Perri, a transformational coach, best-selling author, and fierce advocate for women reclaiming their power. After overcoming adversity from an abusive marriage to Guillain-Barré syndrome, I've made it my mission to help women rise above limiting beliefs, unlock their genius, and create lives of freedom, ease, and fulfillment. Each week, I sit down with 6- and 7-figure female entrepreneurs, executives, and visionaries who are rewriting the rules of success, building lasting impact, and owning their brilliance. Together, we'll share strategies, breakthroughs, and unfiltered conversations designed to inspire your clarity, confidence, and next level power. This isn't just another business podcast. It's where transformation meets legacy and where unstoppable women rise. Welcome to the Next Level Women podcast. Welcome to the Next Level Women podcast, where women stop waiting and start choosing for what's next. I'm your host, Jennifer Perri. I'm a reinvention strategist, best-selling author and speaker, and a CEO of Shiro Life and Empowerment Coaching. Each week, I sit down with powerful women, entrepreneurs, executives, and visionaries who are redefining success and building lives on their terms. And today, I'm super excited to have my guest on this podcast, Shelly O'Donovan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And let's get into it.
Well, I'm going to brag on you just for a few minutes. And, first of all, too, I want to let everybody know I like to have a theme for everything that I do. I think it's important that people understand the direction if they're just hopping in and saying, hey, what's this one about? This one we're going to talk about is really the power of seeing what others miss. And Shelly is a CEO of Authentic Influence Group. She is also a persuasive speaking instructor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She specializes in communication, influence, and behavior change, helping leaders build trust and credibility during times of uncertainty. And I have had a little bit of time to talk with you, get to know you a little bit. But tell us a little bit more about you. What kind of led you down this path?
Yeah, so I started my career in politics and I worked for 2 different state governments. And it was in this place that I started to just hone in those skills of really influence and learned all of the techniques and the tricks. And, when you start early, you have absolutely no power. And so you have to use whatever you can come up with in your toolbox. And then from there, I went on and I worked for Penn Medicine, so big health system in Philadelphia, and then went on to GlaxoSmithKline, right, big pharma. And in those places, I was really working on influencing for my employers and really for patients in both of those places. So trying to firmly influence on behalf of patients. And it was at GSK that I just started to notice that these skills that I'm using externally can really be used internally, and they can be used for me to propel my career forward. But I also see a lot of people internally that could use these skills that are just getting stuck in some of these things that we think should be easy to do, but we're absolutely never taught in school. So in 2015, I opened up my business and started educating people on it and haven't really looked back since. And then I started teaching at Wharton as well. And a lot of that's woven into my classes there too. So it's just been interesting, and it's really helpful and really rewarding to me to help others get their goals met and help them to influence in their circles, usually at work, but sometimes these things tend to work well in your personal life too.
Wow. As y'all can hear, this is why she's here today. Well, I have a couple questions that I have for you. And the first one I want to
Yeah.
start with is, when you think about the work that you're doing today, what feels most important about it right now in the specific
Mm.
season of life that you're in?
Yeah, so for me, the one thing about my season of life is just that I've built up all this experience. So I feel like early in your career, you're trying to build that experience and trying to build your credibility. And at this stage in time, I don't need to do that anymore. But what I think is really interesting, just from a perspective of what's happening out there in the world, is there's a lot of friction between people communicating with one another. There's generational differences. They're huge. There's geopolitical things happening. And there's just so much friction in those everyday connections. And AI is coming in. We don't know what that's going to look like. And so what I do is really teach people to connect with one another in different ways. And certainly influence in the workplace plays into that in a big way. But I think it's that connection point that needs to be taught and really needs a light shown on it right now, because we're just at such a interesting time in the world and in the history of what's happening.
And I think there's something that you said too, that I think a lot of people that maybe have been at this for a long time, myself included, is you get to a point where you feel like you have built the credibility, you've built this is who I am, this is
Right.
what I stand for. And there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect of, well, okay, I've done all of that. I don't need to focus on that. I've got to shift my focus now into how can I best show up for other people, and how can I best support them and encourage them and lead them.
Right.
Because we're all, I mean, if you feel called to do something, I know for myself, I feel called to do what I do. You're leading people to find the best in themselves that they possibly can, and realize they don't have to limit themselves.
Right.
And when you're looking at it, and you brought up something too about in the workplace, how do you see, especially for women, the dynamic of using their natural influence and their nurturing to kind of build teams and be better integrated in that space?
Yeah, I think it's interesting for women, and it depends largely on where you are, not only in an organization, like where you are on that level, but also which organization it is. So I've worked across, a number of companies, all different sizes, but I've done a lot of work with like Fortune 500, like pharma companies, and it's just a tough business sometimes. And so it's often, as a woman, you often have to show up really strong. Like you have to dial up the intensity a little bit further than you normally would. You sometimes get talked over. You need to push back on that. And I often give folks skills, but I'm all about doing it authentically. And the thing is, like, I can teach somebody the skills to be able to do it, but if it doesn't feel right to you, and if it doesn't work for you, then that becomes a problem. And so, when I work with folks, it's like, how can we do this in a way that's going to feel authentic to you, that's going to give you what you need, and move to the next level. And then a lot of what I teach too is just like looking at somebody's personality and really defining like who you're working with, what their personalities are, what your personality is, like what you need to put out. And it's just a really delicate balance sometimes, and having someone to help guide you through it and walk you through it and talk through it too, because it's hard to do it for yourself, but if you have like a Sherpa there helping, it makes it a whole lot easier.
I think too that you said the key thing is being authentic, because and using authentic influence in people's lives and in what you're trying to do, because we live in a world of influencers. People try to push me into that space because of the amount of people I may have that looks at what I do. But I don't want, me personally, I want to inspire people to do the absolute best that they can in their job, in their life, in their finances. So being authentic, I think more than anything in a world where there's just so much of highlight reel versus real life is so important. And I know that I've worked with women that have, made changes in their career because they couldn't show up authentically in what they were doing, and to be there and show up in a role that best suited not only their company, but themselves. Right. So they just had to, it wasn't for them. And for some of them, it took them many, many years to figure that out. But I think too, as you get older, you want to live as genuine and as authentic as possible. And for you, I mean, I know you've spent your career studying influence and behavior. Was there a specific moment that you can think back and look and say, okay, me just being able to communicate with someone is one thing, but there's something way deeper here that was at play?
Yeah, I think for me, so right before I opened my business, I went up to the state capitol on like what it was essentially like a little lobbying junket. So I went up with like some pharma folks and some other healthcare folks from the area, and we did like a hill day. And so, for those of you who don't know, that's when you go and you get put in a group, and then you go appointment to appointment, and you meet with lawmakers and you talk about whatever the issue is that you're there to talk about. And for us, it was like healthcare funding in Pennsylvania. And I'll never forget, I'm in this group of maybe 4 or 5, like, very buttoned up corporate looking people. And we go into an office, and there's a legislator from Philadelphia. His name's Brian Sims. I think he's still in the state house in Pennsylvania, but we walked in. Now he's brand new, like at this point in time. I don't think he had been in office long. And when you're brand new in politics, you have absolutely no power, right, to do anything.
Right.
So we walk in and we're telling him, what we want. And there's all sorts of different, political backgrounds in that group. So people that were on his side of things, people that weren't on his side of things. And we walk in, and I'm just watching how he navigated the room, and he had like lots of body language, and he was talking, and like everybody starts sitting up a little bit more. And then all of a sudden people start smiling, and they're just engaging. And, we make our plea to him, and he's like, well, I'm new here, but I'm going to do what I can to help you. And, when we walked out of the room, I just, like, one of my colleagues turned to me and he said, wow, like he's a real, breath of fresh air. And this was somebody who was on a completely different political end than this Representative Sims was. And I noticed that it was like the body language, and it was just how he was connecting with people. And so it was so deep and there was a genuineness there, right? And he was clearly open with us, like, I don't have any power right now yet.
Right.
We'll see what we can do. And I think for me, that's when it clicked that, like, it's not just about knowing how to communicate, because anyone can do that. It's, how you connect with people, and also just being genuine with it and having real intention behind it to do that. Because it's easy to get caught up in that corporate swirl and be just like, checking the box of the things that you got to do for the day, and not intentionally connecting with people. And that's when it really, that's when you really turn into a leader, when you can have that time to really connect authentically. So for me, that was the moment I saw it in plain sight.
That's a great story too, because I think sitting in the room, and, going to be moving in my next question here in a minute, but you walk in, and I think sometimes when you don't, you're walking into a situation where you don't agree with someone, or somebody may be trying to sell you something, or you're being asked to take on a role that you don't feel 100% confident in or comfortable with. But being able to sit there and talk amongst people who are being genuine and authentic, like this guy, I don't have any power right now, but let's have this conversation, and being respectful. I look at so much stuff that's going on in our world, and if we could just sit at the table with one another and have conversations and be respectful and kind of cancel out all the noise and just human to human, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to next steps. I think posturing and expectations of how you're supposed to come across totally take away a lot of the authenticity. And, so that's a great story, and what a memory to kind of say, hey, in the middle of all this person's starting out, you learned a lot about, skills and stuff that you need to have. I'm skipping one question. So that's
okay. Yeah.
Our conversation doing something else. You talk about kind of noticing, like you just kind of noticed what happened in this room, right, and seeing things that other people might miss. What does that look like in practice, and how can someone begin to develop that type of awareness?
Yeah, so it depends a little bit on where you're starting, because some people just are a little bit better at knowing what that looks like. But it's really, the one thing you can do is learn body language techniques, and then you can watch that, and that gives you a lot of clues. So, if you and I were meeting for a cup of coffee and all of a sudden I sit down and you cross your arms, like,
Mhm.
I don't know what that means in the moment, but it could mean like you're not open to me for some reason. It could mean it's freezing in that room and you're uncomfortable. But at least if I catch that cue, at least then I can say, "Oh, okay, like maybe I need to figure out what's going on. Like maybe Jennifer was upset about what I said yesterday," or and then I can pepper on that. But it becomes this little game that you can kind of see what's happening in a room. And some people feel it too. So I've had folks that have say to me like, "Oh, I walked into that room and I could feel the coldness like right away," right? Because it was just a tough situation. And but once you start to notice those cues, then you can kind of track them. And it's not 100% because it's possible that you're closed off to me in that coffee because something else that happened that has nothing to do with us. But it's at least gives you some ability to know, and then to be able to kind of navigate how you're going to have that conversation from there on.
Did you see that little thumbs up thing come up?
Yes.
I don't know if it's something because you had your hand in that position, if it did it. I have no idea. That was interesting. I'm like, I didn't do that. We're not streaming this anywhere. Anyway, I just want to make sure you see
Yeah, that's funny.
So I guess it is a skill set. And I do watch a lot of behavioral, like for me, if I'm into a story or something in the news, or I always like to get the behavioral panels experience, or, like, hey, this is what I noticed. And so I've learned a lot about the crossed arms or mirroring and things like that. But for somebody who may not be interested in that, like you're talking about the different level of where you are of that understanding. Yeah, maybe I'm sitting there with my arms crossed because it is cold and that person thinks that I'm totally cut off from conversation. So yeah, you have to find a good place to start with that. What role do you think self-trust plays in becoming influential in life and in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's important because I think that you have to be able to sit with sometimes the decisions that you make. So, whatever that decision is, you have to be able to trust that you're in a good place and there's a reason for that. So I think that it's the foundation and the basis. What I think happens, unfortunately, sometimes in business and in these big corporate settings is that you get wrapped up in what's happening and you kind of forget where your core is. Like, the company's going in one direction and you forget that, no, like I don't know, an honest person and I'm not going to lie about things. And then all of a sudden, like you're kind of backed into this corner and you end up doing something that's like so out of alignment with who you are. And so that's really important. So I think having that self-trust can really bridge that confidence. But I often tell folks too, like it's like sometimes you have to think of it in short bursts. So like if I don't know, if tomorrow you were going to give a big talk, to a room full of 1,000 people, like you might be really nervous about that, but it's really only like an hour that you're going to have to really be on. And so if you can just trust yourself that for an hour, you're going to bring your absolute A game to that event, then that makes a huge difference rather than thinking like I have to be on all the time and I always have to be confident. I always have to, so I think that's where self-trust really comes into play to help propel you forward.
And it's funny because I think about the times in my life where I've had to speak on stages in front of people or sing karaoke on a cruise ship, in front of other people, and being reminded of, you may never see these people again. So it's really okay to show up and be exactly who you are in the middle of all of it. So that's how, for me, I look at now some of the people, obviously, I know I will see and come through my, through what I do. But I think it's right. Like just being able to, stand up there and be as confident as you possibly can. And I think too, like at what stage, what kind of early, let me rephrase this a bit. What are some early signs that if you're a leader or someone that's kind of in a position of power, do you see that they kind of start losing trust in themselves and need to kind of regroup? Are there things that you can see in your life or that you see other people go through that is kind of walking them down that path?
Yeah, I think a few things. So sometimes when we get in this stage of like real burnout, that starts to happen. And so that can start to shift you. So when you see that as a leader, folks are getting burned out either on your team or you yourself, like that is one indication that that trust is starting to slip a little bit. And then even just from like the people around you, you can sometimes see that the trust is slipping. So sometimes that body language or like not being clued into meetings that you're probably should be at. And those kind of things are just indications that like something is starting to erode. And the problem sometimes is that, things happen in a big business that are not necessarily clear sometimes to the leader that's even leading them, right? I've had teams, like I've worked with leaders who know there's a layoff coming in their company, but they have no idea whether it's going to be on their team or not. And they don't know until like last minute. And yet they have to lead their team through this, not having all the facts, not knowing, sometimes never knowing, like maybe they know who's going to, if people are going to leave their team, but they still don't know really what's happening or why changes.
Right.
And they can't look like that to their people because they have to show like this steady front. And so that's one place where it's just really challenging and you have to be careful as you navigate those waters.
How would you recommend they do that if they're in that position? And to your point, you have a team of people who are probably struggling or feeling it because
Right.
You can sense it, especially women. We're tuned into stuff when we know something is coming or feels off. And I've met a lot of leaders who are just really cut and dry. They're just, well, I'm just gonna lead it and they're gonna go, and there's no emotion there. Well, then you have other ones that are their team and the people that work for them are family or have become very close. How would you recommend that they navigate that in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to have some empathy for the person sitting across from you. Like if you have to let somebody go, unfortunately, like they have families, they have, different ways that they're going to have to navigate this. But I think to the extent that you can be open and honest, that's helpful. You're not always able to be 100% honest in these, situations. But I always say, just call it out then. Like, I can't give you all the information, but what I can tell you is XYZ. I think leaders who just kind of try to rip the Band-Aid off quick without any emotion, like they just fall flat and people don't, and then what happens is as a leader, you still have to lead that team after people have left. And now all of a sudden I have people that are so disengaged that they don't want to be there, right? They feel like their friends weren't taken care of well.
Right.
I had one client who decided there was like a big layoff at his company, and the leader that he was reporting into decided she was going to leave with this big layoff and try something else in life. And before she left, her whole team was going to get let go. And before she left, she went to every department in that company and found every person on her team a spot.
Wow.
And I mean, that's like the best case scenario, right? And they knew it. And she ended up, she took the hit and she left and she went on to do something else. But that's real leadership, right? And not many leaders will do that. And, and so it's, that's where the rubber meets the road. But those kind of people that do that, everyone wants to work for them. And the thing is, once you work for someone like that, like you just can't go back to like, right, like a bad leader, because you're like, I've had the best. I've had somebody who's really taken care of me.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what does it take internally and externally for a woman to step into the level of influence in her own life and career?
Yeah, this is challenging. And I think there's not necessarily one answer. Like it's not a, this fits all. I think you have to figure out what it is for you that's going to make the difference. And so, certainly in a business setting, in a corporate setting, sometimes that means being a little bit more than you typically would, right? Being a little more aggressive or a little bit more powerful, pushing back on people when they talk over you in a meeting or they say things that are not that don't come from a good place, or they're just ignorant. I run into a lot of comments from people that are just kind of ignorant and they say things, and sometimes the best thing you can do there is just make them feel a little bit uncomfortable, so that maybe, or call it out in a nice way. So those things happen. And then like in the rest of someone's life, in a woman's life, I think it's finding those things that light you up and that make you a little bit more confident. I mean, I go to kickboxing. It's like such a fun thing. And I only started going because they opened one like right near my house. And I was like, I'm going to try this. And, that to me is like an hour where I can just like let go of the day and kind of be myself and be a little bit more confident in the moment too. So I think that that's the way, like just finding those things that really work for you. But again, it's not really a one fit all kind of scenario.
Well, and I know a lot of the women that I work with too, they've been just spent their lives taking care of other people.
Yeah.
And one of the very first things that I make them do is kind of set up a personal no manifesto, which is, this is what I'm not available for. This is kind of, we teach people how to treat us. Sometimes that's hard, especially if you're in a position where you're working underneath someone and you're just getting in there and you're getting your feet wet. But I think it's important that women use their voice, and we can do it in a powerful yet respectful way. And I think just, people like you and what you do and are important. So how is it best, Shelly, for people to get a hold of you if they want to continue the conversation and possibly utilize your services?
Yeah. So the best way to track me down is on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Shelly O'Donovan. I put out tips and some videos sometimes, so that might be helpful. And you can certainly go to my website. So it's AuthenticInfluenceGroup.com and find me there too.
Well, I have totally enjoyed having you here. I know this is not going to be our last conversation for sure. I'm going to find ways that we can continue to collaborate and work together. But I appreciate you so much.
I love it. Well, thank you for having me. And, I hope that everybody can just find a little bit of confidence and a little trust in themselves today.
Well, we'll definitely be sure to include all of Shelly's contact information as well, along with the podcast, so that you have it. But, this episode really, it was just an invitation for women to stop second guessing what they see, what they feel, and understand in the rooms that they're in. And it's not about becoming more polished. It's about becoming more attuned, more grounded, more trusted, and more authentic. And from that place, true influence becomes inevitable. So until we meet again, everyone, keep doing the work, keep choosing yourself, and keep rising. And I'll be back to guide you up to your next level. Thanks again, Shelly.
Thank you.